What is going on, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global here, back with another video. And we have been talking about the draft a lot, but I do want to switch it back for this video into some free agency. And 4 guys that New England could still look into to signing. Now, I did have 5 guys up until Danny Shelton signed with the Giants, but these guys all, as of right now, of recording this video, which is April 2nd, all of these 4 guys are still free agents and guys that the Patriots could still sign. Now, first up on this list is going to be linebacker / defensive end Ryan Kerrigan. This is a guy that I recently had, well, I shouldn't say recently, but back when I made my most recent video on how the Patriots should spend their cap space, I had Ryan Kerrigan in that video. Ryan Kerrigan is a really nice veteran piece, okay? Underline that word veteran. Okay, he's 32 years old. Before the start of the 2021 season, he's going to be 33. So he's a guy that, for me personally, I signed to a 1-year deal. He's not someone you're going to sign to a long-term deal. After a year or two, he's probably going to end up retiring, but he is still a very nice piece at 32, and adding a veteran and a leader and a very successful guy like Ryan Kerrigan, I think could be very beneficial because, let's be real with ourselves, the Patriots do have still a lot of young guys in the building, and that could just be added come via draft time. You have guys like Chase Winovich, you have guys like Uche, you have guys like Jennings. These are all guys that could very much learn from a Ryan Kerrigan. And yes, they do still have, now they have a Kyle Van Noy, but they're, of course, getting back Dont'a Hightower, Matt Judon. They have a lot of these veterans in there, but you can never have too much leadership, and that's what Ryan Kerrigan is, a true leader. And the thing here, too, is also that you can never really rely on Dont'a Hightower with his injury history. And that's the big thing, is that if Hightower was to go down, you have Ryan Kerrigan that can immediately plug in, be a signal caller, and be a leader in that locker room. But again, you never have enough guys who can come in and help be leaders and teach these younger guys, because Dont'a Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, Matt Judon, while they are all leaders, they all do play different ways. They all have different styles, and these younger guys can learn from each of these guys and kind of take what they want in order to better their play. Now, I have heard Ryan Kerrigan's name floating a little bit, but I'm not going to lie, I'm surprised I haven't heard more floating around about him. And that's mainly going to be because he didn't have a too successful season this past year. It wasn't bad, but he did actually request a trade from the Washington football team. Of course, that was not granted. But I do think the main reason that he's still a free agent is that teams are concerned with the age, him getting up there in age. How long do you sign him? That's a big question mark for teams, and it's rightfully so. But I do know that he has been linked back to the Bengals. I think they even brought him in for a workout, or they were interested in him, one of those two, but it sounds like that's not going to happen. I've heard him being linked back to the Jags. But of course, nothing is set in stone. And Ryan Kerrigan has not come out and said, hey, I don't want to play in the NFL anymore, so I do expect him to at least play one more season. Pretty nice build at 6'4", 259 pounds. 2020, again, stats weren't anything too crazy, but he did still put up a pretty nice season, pretty decent season. He ranked or was tied for 120th in the league in solo tackles with 6. He was tied for 64th in the league with 5 assisted tackles. He was tied for 31st in the league with 6 sacks and had 0 forced fumbles. Overall, he had a grade of 59.7, a run defensive grade of 45, and a pass rush grade of 69.9. That is the main thing about him. He's going to be an edge defender, or at least a guy that shoots the gap and is able to get to the quarterback, apply pressure. That's his game. And if you look at how the Washington football team used him this past year, it's very evident to what I just said. He had a total amount of snaps with 398. 146 of those came as a run defender, and 238 came as a pass rusher. Now, if you're going to look at the 2019 season, he saw definitely more snaps with 642 of them. So just about double, actually, compared to what he played this past season, which is probably part of why he wanted a trade. He wasn't being utilized. But 291 run defensive snaps, 305 pass rush snaps, an overall grade of 63, a run defensive grade of 55, and a pass rush grade of 73.2. Obviously, those numbers don't stand out too much. I would say the Washington football team the past couple of years have gotten it together on their defensive line, though, to the point where Ryan Kerrigan hasn't been, a main piece, a necessarily needed piece. And honestly, the last few years, Ryan Kerrigan's snap count has just continuously gone down, and that's when his production has gone down. If we go back one more year here with PFF, 2018, he had a total of 820 snaps, 309 run snaps or run defensive snaps, 470 pass rush snaps. So clearly, they haven't been utilizing him as much. 2018, he was able to put up 14 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 19 solo tackles, and 10 assisted tackles. Overall grade of 75.9, run defensive grade of 71.7, so that significantly was better, and a pass rush grade of 70.2. That year, he was actually tied for forced fumbles seventh tied for forced fumbles, with 3 of them, and actually just ranked 6th in sacks and with 14. Overall, I don't think it would cost the team much, but I don't want to keep rambling because it's been 6 minutes on one guy. But next up, I want to talk about a wide receiver. This one is in our former friend, Derrick Bird. Y'all, surprisingly, Derrick Bird is still a free agent. I didn't expect him to be free agent this far along into free agency, just with how things were being talked about. Reports were saying that it doesn't seem like he was going to return to New England, mostly because the asking price was probably going to be too high. He was going to get a better market somewhere else, which did surprise me slightly. Now, he did have a very good season with the Patriots this past year. It was a career high season for him also, so I expected a team to at least bring him in for a workout, have interest in him, something, but it's been completely dead for Derrick Bird. No interest from teams that's been reported, no workouts, nothing. So I think because of that, the Patriots could get him back for a very, very minimal price. And again, he had a really good season with the Patriots this past year. Now, were there some times you're like, Derrick Bird, what are you doing? Especially that wide open drop in the end zone. But again, Derrick Bird was the Patriots' number 1 receiver this past year. Number 1 receiver when he is at best a number 3 guy. He is a 3 to 4, maybe 5 wide receiver on a depth chart, and the Patriots made him number 1. The big thing here, too, with Derrick Bird is that he has experience in the Patriots system. Just a year, but it is still experience, and he has a lot of experience with Cam Newton. Cam Newton's going to be kind of heading into a position where there's a lot of new guys in this system. Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Nelson Agholor, Kendrick Bourne, and while these players are definitely a significant upgrade from what we had last year, they are still guys that Cam Newton doesn't have familiarity with. Derrick Bird, he has familiarity with him this past year. He has several seasons of familiarity with him with the Carolina Panthers. And if it doesn't cost much, why would it hurt to bring Derrick Bird back? Having a depth guy on the field who brings speed. Again, he ran a 4.28 40-yard dash at his combine a few years ago. One of the fastest receivers in the league, just doesn't get credit for it. Faster than a Tyreek Hill and a Brandon Cooks. And of course, he was the Patriots' deep threat this past season. I do know Nelson Agholor is expected to take over that role of kind of being the speedster and the downfield threat. But again, other than Nelson Agholor, we don't really have somebody who is a deep threat. Bringing back a Derrick Bird, a guy with, again, a 4.28 speed for a 40-yard combine, and was our deep threat this past season, having him again for next to nothing, I would expect. Having him much lower on the depth chart, I would not mind seeing him back. I would love to see some more speed. Maybe a Nelson Agholor on one side and a Derrick Bird on the other. Speed kills. It's going to be hard to cover both of these guys. Have both of them running go routes. Have maybe a Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith on the other side. Maybe running a intermediate route. And I think that could really open up the offense. Overall, he had a total of 604 receiving yards. That ranked 59th in the NFL. He had 1 touchdown, 73 targets, 47 receptions. PFF gave him an overall grade of 61.4, a receiving grade of 63.3, and a rushing grade of 36.8. Not too worried about that rushing grade just because it's mostly end arounds, so that doesn't really matter. Essentially that's what kind of brought his PFF grade down a little bit. But when they did give him rush attempts, he was averaging 7.5 yards per carry, which isn't bad. And to just go and prove my point that he was a deep threat for the Patriots, he was averaging 12.9 yards per reception this past year. Drops were a little bit of an issue as he did have 5. But of course, that still isn't the worst in the NFL. We've seen guys who have had much larger drop portions than just 5. And again, with him not being a starter, I wouldn't expect that to be as much of a problem. Now, next up here is a defensive player. It's going to be a safety in Trey Boston. This is a guy that I kind of wanted the Patriots to target a few times the last few years since he's been a free agent, but it would make sense for the Patriots to add him. They do need safety help, and he would add the safety help in a position that the Patriots have needed it since they traded Duron Harmon about a year ago, because they never actually found Duron Harmon's replacement. Trey Boston isn't really the type of guy you put up against safeties, doesn't really play in the box, isn't a hybrid linebacker. He's more of your Devin McCourty role. He'll sit back there in coverage, kind of read the quarterback's eyes, and play the free safety role. Even looking at what the Patriots currently have, I don't know who's going to fill that role. I don't think that Jalen Mills is that type of guy. Do they try to roll with a Bryant, who is a cornerback that they tried to move to safety? Do they try to do a Juwan Williams? I don't know. I think at this point you just either draft someone or you pick up a guy who is a free agent to fill that role rather than trying to convert somebody. Especially because what I see within the Patriots' current system, they don't have a cornerback that they could kind of transition into that role of free safety. You look at Juwan Williams, he's more of a kind of hybrid linebacker or someone that you cover tight ends with, not really a free safety. But Trey Boston is a guy that hasn't gotten too much looks, so I wouldn't expect him to be someone that it would be too much of a market to bring him in. And if things don't go well, maybe sign him to just like a 1-year deal worth minimum and bring him in as a camp body. If things work out, they work out. That's great. And if they don't, then you can just cut him as, a air quote surprise cut. But at 6'1", 205 pounds, Brain, a decent size, probably average, maybe a little below to safety. This past year with the Panthers, he had a total of 79 solo tackles, 1 interception. He was targeted 52 times and allowed 36 receptions. That was tied for 15th in the NFL. He had an overall grade of 53.8. His PFF grades in 2020 were not great, I will say that, which is why I think his market is pretty low. But an overall grade of 53.8, run defensive grade of 58.1, a pass rush grade of 59.9, and a coverage grade of 49.9. He overall had a total snap count of 1,037, so they were utilizing him a lot there in Carolina. He had a total of 373 run defensive snaps, 29 pass rush snaps, and 635 coverage snaps. Don't let this past year fool you, though. This was a not good season for Trey Boston, but at the same time, the Carolina Panthers were a little bit up and down, especially with the new head coach coming in. That can do a lot. Look at 2019 with the Panthers. He did much better. Much better. He had an overall grade of 76.4, a run defensive grade of 36.8, a pass rush grade of 74, and a coverage grade of 90.6. He was elite in coverage. So again, don't let those 2020 stats kind of predict or tell the type of player he is. 2019, he was tied for 33rd in the league with 55 solo tackles. He was also tied for 8th in interceptions with 3. He was targeted 16 times and allowed just 8 receptions. He had a total snap count of 1,104 snaps, 431 run defensive snaps, 4 pass rush snaps, and 669 coverage snaps. If you even want to take it back a year prior, 2018 had an overall grade of 74.1, a run defensive grade of 66.7, a pass rush grade of 68.9, and a coverage grade of 78.2. You can clearly see that he is someone who does fare well in coverage despite how he was graded in 2020. In 2018, he also had 950 total snaps on defense. So you can clearly see that he is utilized heavily, and he's someone that is pretty durable also. I think that he'd be a pretty good addition, but I do mainly believe that the Patriots just do need to add some help still at safety. And lastly is going to be a guy that I've talked about several times. Guys, we're going to talk about my boy Duke Johnson here. Running back, former Houston Texan, former Cleveland Brown. I'm surprised he's still a free agent. I'm surprised no one's looked into him over the last few years. And since joining the league, really, he's been one of the best as a receiving running back out of the backfield. Now, this need isn't as high as I would say it was prior to signing James White, because they kind of got that aspect back. But the only thing here is that James White is only signed for a 1-year deal. Yes, I do think that they'll draft a running back to kind of fill out that role and become the next kind of James White if White does not end up returning. But Duke Johnson still is a really great player, still young, younger than James White, younger than Rex Burkhead, so he could still be that future guy. And he's fast. He's a power back. He has a little bit of shiftiness to him, but he is fast. And a fast guy that can just bulldozer over to you and catch passes out of the backfield can be super lethal, especially in a Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels system. I think part of why you haven't heard his name as much over the last few years, he's been with the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans have just been a dumpster fire from coaching and just how the team is played, just from top to bottom. Just a terrible franchise that needed the full-on rebuild that they are going through. So don't look into these stats too much. I think if it was with a team like New England or the Chiefs or the Bucs, just a better team with coaching and an offensive scheme, he would have played much better. But in 2020, he had 77 carries, 235 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and averaged 3.1 yards per carry. Had an overall grade in PFF of 62.6, rushing grade of 59.8, and a receiving grade of 66.7. He was averaging 3.1 yards per attempt. Let's keep in mind that Houston Texans defense, just their blockers in general, are pretty terrible. If you came to New England, that would be much different with a top 5 offensive line. You have tight ends and receivers who can block for you also, so I would expect that to be very different. He was targeted 34 times with 28 receptions, so again, 249 yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and 1 drop. And he had 4 explosive runs, and an explosive run is considered a run that goes for 10 or more yards. Now, I have seen with PFF that a lot of players' grades have gone down in 2020, probably because of no offseason and the virus and everything, so understandably so. If you do look at his 2019 stats, they are a little bit better. Again, he was, I believe, still with the Texans at that time, if I'm thinking correctly. But his 2019 stats, overall grade for PFF, 74.2, rushing grade 78.3, receiving grade of 71. He had 83 carries, 410 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Let me see, what else do we got here? He had 1 fumble that season also. He had 11 explosive runs. 11, which again, considered 10 or more yards on that run. So we had 11 of those. Receiving-wise, he was targeted 62 times, 44 receptions, 410 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, and 1 drop. Overall, I really would like the addition of Duke Johnson. Even if they just kind of want to bring him in for a training camp and see what he has, I think that it would be much worth it. And again, he's been one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. Mix that with his big body. He's elusive, but he can still bulldoze over everyone. He is considered a power back, but again, he would be the fastest running back that the Patriots currently have on their roster if he did come in. But those are 4 free agents the Patriots could still sign. If you guys do want to see a part 2 of this video, let me know in the comment sections below. Before we do end this one off, though, I want to talk about the sponsors of this video, betonline.ag. Now, BetOnline has the fastest and easiest ways to bet on all of your sports action. Football might be over, but NBA, college basketball, and the NHL are still in full swing. BetOnline even covers awards, TV shows, and reality TV, along with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything you can imagine. BetOnline also has you covered for all of the news, scores, and odds, and it is the best way to place your bets, and it's completely free to sign up. All you guys got to do is head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% off welcome bonus on that first deposit. This is BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in with the action, and don't forget to use that promo code CLNS50 for a 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Guys, like always, I appreciate you for watching this video. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section below. Remember to give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for all of your New England Patriots news, and I'll catch you in the next one.